Oh, all right. We are live. And on today's episode, alongside guest host Bianca Léger, we interview founders of Vellum Health, also known as the Ultra Mystic in the United States, who are raising consciousness and the capacity for change with their effective, safe, psilocybin-containing mushroom microdose products. Welcome to the winner circle, Aaron and May.
All right, thank you. Nice to be here.
Thanks, Derek. And hi, Bianca, as well. Thank you so much for having us.
So happy to have you here.
Yeah, so the goal of this podcast is to awaken consciousness, and that's a journey that always begins with the self. And I try to make this podcast very uplifting, inspiring, and empowering. So even though there's a lot of chaos going on in the global scene right now, this is not where we're going to be talking much about that. And the first question is very light, and that is, what do you love about your world right now? So that will go to both of you, Aaron and May. What do you love about your world right
now? Well, I can start. I think that when there's a lot of uncertainty and things are falling apart and changing form, there's a real opportunity for something that hasn't been done before, or a shift forward in kind of collective consciousness and where our culture is going. So I feel like there's a lot of potential for positive change, even as things are really chaotic. And in our world, we're going to be relocating soon, and I'm almost done school, which has been a really long haul. So there's a lot of like almost completed kind of things. So that's what I'm loving. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with May. I mean, I think that's the way things are, even though there's so many fractures and stuff like that, it is a good chance for an opportunity to do something different. And I'm just loving that, a lot of these things that we've been working on and putting a lot of effort into for the last couple of years, it's all sort of, the time is coming, things are starting to line up, and it's lovely. It's awesome.
So May, you mentioned you'll be finishing school and you're currently completing your master's of clinical psychology.
Clinical counseling, they say. Yeah.
Clinical counseling, yeah. And Aaron, you have a long history in the mushroom business. Your father, over 30 years ago, he started one of the first organic mushroom farms in Ontario, the East Coast, where you guys grew reishi and oyster mushrooms.
Yep, and shiitake.
And shiitake.
That was sort of our specialty, really.
So before we get into what you're doing at Vellum Health, I want to just kind of get into your personal stories, your personal missions. I feel that's like a good question to get the audience to familiarize themselves with their guests. And that is, what is your personal mission? So that mission that inspires you in all that you do, whether that be personal, professional, and everywhere in between. And then after we go to your guys's personal missions, let's go and examine the mission of Vellum Health.
All right.
Sure. There'll be a lot of overlap there, Eric.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Well, my personal mission centers around my belief in people's capacity. I really, truly believe that people can enact and undergo fundamental, profound change in their lives and in how they think about themselves and how they relate to themselves and in healing trauma. So everything that we're doing and everything that I believe is based on that idea that people absolutely can heal. There's a really great capacity. And if people are nurtured and given the right tools and support, mental health and a level of self-acceptance, I think, is really possible. That could really transform, the world that we live in and how people engage with each other. What about you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to think that we're trying to make the world a bit of a better place, just in any little way that, that a person can, individual can. And I'm trying to have success and do things and help people while still sort of doing things the right way and, sticking to the things that we believe in, which is not necessarily lining up in the way that things are done or business is done, or, even as far as like health, healthcare and, mental health and stuff like that. I mean, it's not, those things don't necessarily align, and we're just trying to take our steps and do our things in the right way.
That's a good way to put it. Like I would add to that. It's like bridging the gap. I think that especially in mental health care and therapy, it's very, very expensive. It's very costly. And so there's a real elitism to mental health. And I think that that can be shifted with microdoses. So there's a social justice component to that. You know, people should have access to medicine that is potentially, they could grow it themselves, or it could be next to free, that could actually make them feel better. I see that as a social justice issue.
And one way you guys are attending to your individual missions is through your company, which has been almost at it for 2 years now, and that's Vellum Health. So let's talk about Vellum Health. What is your mission at Vellum Health, aka the Ultra Mystic for our American listeners? And what exactly is it that you guys do? I've kind of mentioned that you guys do psilocybin microdoses, but you also recently brought in some cannabis products as well as various forms of edibles. So let's just kind of get into the mission of Vellum Health and just kind of all about it.
So sort of plant-based wellness, and we include psilocybin in plant-based, so there's sort of some controversy about that, but we do it. So plant-based healing and plant-based medicine is really, I would say, our personal passion. And so making that accessible is the mission of Vellum, and helping people understand that there are a lot of tools that their doctor might not necessarily know much about, and that their people's ability to gauge what is safe for them and their ability to, you know, determine what's good for them based on what they're drawn to, or they have a curiosity about it, and their ability to do their own research. That's part of the sort of empowering people to feel like they can be in control of their own health and their mental health. And we're obviously pro medication and pro pharmaceuticals. You know, if that's necessary or valid for people, that's critical. It's not an either or dichotomy at all between these medicines and pharmaceuticals. And we found that in our research and the surveys that we've conducted, our clients see those two as overlapping and compatible and complementary as well. So that's been really interesting, actually.
Absolutely. And we're trying to, you know, we're also trying to sort of, you know, move first and take the first steps. And we're going to try to bring, you know, a high quality, effective product that's, you know, that's handmade and is thoughtful and well thought out, that's going to actually, you know, help people. And like she said, give people access to something that is, that's effective and that they can use on their own terms.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
That's what I really love about your website. When I look it up and I look at your page, everything is so easily understandable for people who don't necessarily have a lot of experience with these kinds of medicine, and how much to take, how and what settings, just generally who are new to it. There's so many amazing tips that are given on your website, and it's really making it accessible for everybody. So it's so exciting to think that we're bringing this to more people.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks so much.
We really do. And you know, because especially right now, especially the way the situation is that you know, the interest and, you know, even sort of the science or whatever is sort of totally outstripping the pace of, you know, what's out there, what's accessible. And then most people that are looking, you know, to get their hands on something like this or access these things, it's just the way it's being presented in most places. You know, it's still a gray area as far as the marketplace, as far as, you know, buying stuff and acquiring the things like that. So we're just trying to present it in a certain way, and you know, just let people understand and just sort of give our knowledge and stuff like that, as opposed to it just being, you know, a product that you're buying. Yeah. And for some people, yes, it is medicine, and for some people it's a lifestyle tool. Do you know what I mean? Just like yoga is a lifestyle tool, just like, you know, dancing or singing or any of these things that we use to like bolster our mental health. It's a tool like that, you know, it's not some like foreign thing or some like drug thing to be afraid of. It's like a very accessible, low impact thing that you can try with no risk to your
health.
It's like a foundation building from
Yeah.
the ground, from the bottom up, on like normal, everyday principles, things that you already do, instead of like a top down approach where, there's something wrong and you're going to fix it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about not pathologizing people on a really deep level,
Meaning it's for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't have to be something wrong with you. You don't have to be like sick or something to want to try microdosing. It's like, just getting a reset or just getting some perspective or feeling more grateful for your life. Like most of us could use that, especially recently.
Yes.
Maintenance.
Yes, it really does offer that gift of expanding your perspective, and that changes the whole experience. It really sets us up for just embodying more gratitude in our life. So that's such a gift.
It makes things easier. It makes making healthier choices easier. It makes pursuing things that we love easier. It makes it, I like to say, it lets you just go for the joy. No hesitation.
I love how you talk about it being a lifestyle, because I've never really heard people talk about it that way before. You hear about mushroom ceremonies, you hear about, people going all in. Some people use it for parties. Some people see it as this very sacred medicine. There's so many different ways of looking at it, but to look at it as just a everyday thing you can take, because I saw also on your Instagram page how you even suggest microdosing to go to work, like something you can just to feel more focused, I suppose. Is that what would be the effect for somebody microdosing?
Totally.
Yeah, like especially if you and even if you're using it as a protocol, just as it's an overall, an overall state of well-being and overall sort of, activeness to your mind and, openness to creativity and stuff like that, that that you can have at work. There's a lot of companies you read online and you read articles about in Silicon Valley and stuff like that. And there's a lot of companies there that are doing, they're actively promoting it. They're giving all the employees microdose Friday and stuff like that. Yeah.
It's part amazing. Of like the biohacking community and things like that. It's really big. Maybe Derek, you might have heard among athletes and stuff, because we get a lot of like trainers and people who it allows you to be very, very single focused, and it can also give you like big bursts of energy, especially if you combine it with other mushrooms, like cordyceps is the one we use for energy. So
And one of your friends, I heard you mention on a previous episode that you recorded with High Tea, Riley Cote, he's a hockey player, and both him and Daniel Carcillo are hockey players that are using psilocybin mushrooms to treat concussions and brain injuries. Can we get a bit into that? What do you guys know about using psilocybin to help the brain?
Well, before we started this, I didn't know anything. And now I know a hell of a lot, because a lot of customers have sought us out specifically for traumatic brain injury, car accidents, spinal injuries. One of our clients is paralyzed, so Alzheimer's, dementia, deterioration of memory, those kinds of things. So before I wasn't thinking about that. I don't know, Aaron probably more so, but the amount of feedback that's come from customers about that kind of stuff, apparently combining the psilocybin in very low doses with large amounts of lion's mane and other things that support cognitive functioning and memory right before bed. Apparently that dosing has been proving to be quite effective for some people. So, yeah. And if it's having an effect on, I'm not sure if are they doing microdosing with the head injuries for that, or are they doing macro dosing for PTSD? Because those are sort of the two ways that psilocybin is used in traumatic head injury situations.
It's something that I'm trying to learn more about myself. And I'd love to have Riley on here or Daniel Carcillo to talk about, because I know those are two of the pioneers in terms of bringing psilocybin to athletes.
Yeah, well, I know with that, I'm not a sports person really, but I do know that there is a lot of brain swelling and like brain damage that athletes can sustain. And the mushrooms themselves help support and form new neural connections. So if there were parts of your brain that were damaged, that could potentially help strengthen neuron development in that area, the damaged area, or in the other areas to compensate for it.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure, they do have, functional mushrooms in particular have anti-inflammatory effects. So if you had swelling and, anywhere in your body, potentially with your brain, it could also be helpful that way. But I'm not super familiar beyond that. What about you, Aaron?
Well, and I don't know, I just something to add to that is it definitely, I mean, there's a lot of studies, and that's one of the things that first got me going with the Paul Stamets and the Paul Stamets stack. And they showed that the combination of the psilocybin and the lion's mane, and they're actually seeing regeneration of neurons and very, very interesting things happening in the brain on some of the studies. And it's basically the only thing they've found that would actually stimulate that. The lion's mane has the nerve growth factor, and it promotes the production of that. So apparently what happens is there's a lot of these, there's regrowth of neurons, which is something they've never seen. And, so exactly, I mean, anything helps, obviously, when you've got a brain injury and there's a lot of traumas that happen to the brain, whether it's an impact or something like that, or even, long depression or, chemical things, drug use and things like that. So true. And your brain works in a different way after. And we found that a lot of people, it's very stimulating, and it's very, it's healing. But I think a part of it is also sort of, especially once you're experiencing things like that, I think it's really important to understand that it's going to help change the patterns of thinking and stuff like that, especially for an athlete. You've done things your whole life, you're doing things a certain way. And that, especially the brain injury, is something that's just, it's not the same as an arm or a leg that you're just going to, you work it out, so certain your aggressiveness or the way you just want to attack the problem is something that's ingrained so long that they want to get back out there on the ice or whatever, what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, you've got to give yourself time to rest and heal just on a basic level, but just also the way you're going to attach it and the way you feel about it, the anxiety and the stress that you're feeling about it, you're going to have to sort of come to terms with what's happened. You know what I mean? You want to just pretend nothing's happening, go back out there, but it's something like a head injury. It's like, then, another knock on and then that's you got to be able to put the things in perspective. So I think that's important. That's an important part of it.
Yeah.
And another great tool that I know has been proven efficient for brain injury and TBI has been the use of cannabis, in particular CBD, which I'm very excited to see you guys bringing CBD. You started off with pens for your customers. And the whole reason I got brought attention to you guys' company was I was trying to medicate with CBD, but in Canada, the restrictions are so strict and the dosages are so small.
Oh, I know.
It's 300. You have to be
a millionaire to have it work effectively if you're buying it that way. I know.
Absolutely. And like the cannabis doctor that I was working with said that exact same thing. You're going to go broke trying to medicate yourself on legal CBD in Canada. And then she recommended me check out your guys' company. And then that's where I began my journey with microdosing with Vellum Health product. But that's a Canadian doctor that says,
I know that woman is really amazing and sends us a ton of clients. She came through one of her employees, Evan, and they're just wonderful people. Yeah, they really want healing for people. Like they're so impressive. She's so impressive.
And that's one of the things that we're going to start not to interrupt, but that was one of the main concepts that we're going to do too. We haven't really rolled out many CBD products, or we haven't wrapped our head around exactly what we're going to do, but we want to give, a high dose product that is actually something that's going to be useful and effective. And just the alternatives right now are not there, like you said, because just especially the pricing and the regulations, it's just impossible.
Mm-hmm. So for those not familiar, could you maybe give us some of the benefits of CBD for the brain, but just also in general?
Totally. The reason I like it a lot is because all of my stress manifests physically. So there's a lot of like physical contracting, you know what I mean? And like the phone posture, and like I have a hunchback and like my shoulders up around my ears and stuff. So the CBD allows my body to uncontract. So it's a lot easier for me to relax physically and physiologically. And when you combine the CBD with, say, like a sauna or the bath and magnesium and GABA, you can get a really lasting level of relaxation that helps you get a much better sleep. That's my main thing that I like about it, is the body tension that gets released.
That sounds so therapeutic.
Yeah, we're interested in seeing sort of the the combined effects. We feel that obviously you want some THC to be present with the CBD as well to sort of get the full therapeutic effect. And then we're finding very interesting combinations and synergies when you have the CBD present with some of the other medicines, like whether it's mushrooms or anything like that. It's very good to enhance the feeling. It's very good for physical relaxation, and as far as any inflammation through the various different parts of the body, including the brain. And it's crucial if because the way that life is today, you're getting inflammation from so many sources, whether it's the food you're eating or
and just central
everything.
nervous system activation. We're really bombarded, so it helps relax a lot. And there's anti-cancerous properties and various other things, but it is really the dosing. Getting a high enough dose to have it be effective is really the key.
Oh, for sure. So how do you recommend stacking cannabis and psilocybin mushrooms? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's hard to say because Aaron and I both smoke weed all day, every day.
And we've been using cannabis, daily for quite some time.
But for somebody, let's say, who was using it for pain, chronic pain, or somebody who was using it for sleep, I usually recommend doing like a 3 kind of like your day would be kind of staggered. So you might do like psilocybin in the morning, and then you would do cannabis in the evening, and then right before bed you would have CBD, magnesium, and GABA. You know what I mean? So it would be like a vitamin punch right at the end. Because like it depends what you're like. Some people can eat mushrooms and just fall right asleep, no problem. Some people are like really stimulated and they can't fall asleep at all. But if you are somebody who, if it wears off by mid-afternoon, you can even consider doing like 2 small doses. So like a 50 in the morning and then a 50 around 2 or 3 p.m. And then at night, it would be cannabis, maybe, 50 milligrams, and then the cannabis at night. For most people, eating 10 milligrams of cannabis is a lot, So maybe that's the right amount for you. And then I would do, 50 milligrams of CBD, 100 milligrams of CBD, and then pretty much as much magnesium and GABA as you can tolerate.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Make sure you don't have to get up too early the next day. That's the most important part.
I'm very familiar with the benefits of magnesium at night, especially for athletes, for performance. Exactly. And GABA has been something I've played around with, but it's something that I'm less familiar with. So can you kind of talk about that GABA stack at the end of the night in combination with CBD and magnesium?
Yeah, I mean, the GABA, we just recently debuted a sort of restorative pack on the website. And so that's just like a one night, 4 50 milligram microdoses, 1 magnesium that's 500 milligrams, and 1 GABA that's 800 milligrams.
Okay. Yeah, we find that to be a pretty good combination. Yeah. I mean, we use, a lot of the GABA products that are out there are lower dose than that, but we find that, once you get used to the GABA, it's good to have a higher milligram capsule, and it's just then you get that effects. It's absolutely going to wash your brain. It's going to react with all those GABA receptors in your brain, and we just feel that those things together, it offers a good way to go to sleep and to get that rest and to sort of shut down at the end of the day. Yeah, and then you're also getting like. When you do that with the magnesium, especially, your body goes in a certain direction, even though you're getting that stimulation from your brain, and it opens you up to different thoughts and stuff like that, while getting rid of some of the stuff from your day. So then it's like it's a really good way to sort of get into that mode, and then also have and have your brain active during the night when it's resting and dreaming and just stimulating in that way.
Essentially what we're trying to do is create ideal conditions for your body to heal itself, or not heal itself, that's kind of a sort of new age BS term, but create conditions for it to engage in its optimal level of relaxation and the optimal level of integration of the day and the optimal level of digestion and those kinds of things.
So let's hit a rewind on this conversation, and we will examine your guys' origin stories. What brought you into this field, this line of work? And like when did mushrooms come into your life? I know, May, you grew up in the West Coast in BC,
Yeah,
around by a lot of hippies, you
I did.
mentioned in the past. And
100%.
Aaron, your family has been long steeped in the mushroom world, so you kind of know through it that way. But let's kind of just get into it more. What role did mushrooms play in your life growing up, and what led you guys to create this business 2 years ago?
Sure. Well, I mean, for me, I mean, obviously, you know, once we started the farm at the time, you know, I was young. You know, I didn't think too much about it, but my father, he started reading a lot about it. He went and did a couple of talks with Paul Stamets and stuff like that. And then he just decided to just take a complete left turn. And, you know, he bought this piece of property outside of Toronto, and, you know, the mushroom farm started. So I was working there and like seeing various aspects of this business, like the shiitake growing, doing the lab work since I was a teenager. And it just became the family business, you know, and it became part of our life. And just it was regular for me, but at the same time, just it's fascinating, you know, getting in there and getting to work in the lab and getting to work with the mycelium and just seeing how all these things grow. And just, you know, we were producing quite a bit of mushrooms. We were doing it organically, and it just it spread to everything, you know. And the business progressed from one thing to the next, and we started making products, and we started sort of spearheading the farmers markets and all that movement here. And just seeing all the different benefits, and traveling through Asia and stuff like that, and just seeing how those, you know, the cultures there are using it, see how they revere it, and how it's been, you know, it's just such a standard part of life over there.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then, you know, like I said, coming back, and, you know, it's like I said, the business has evolved, and we've consulted, and, you know, we've helped other farmers, and we've become sort of a hub for other growers in the area. And just now, I mean, it's just as time passed, you know, and then there's this big surge out of nowhere where all of a sudden this awareness is coming, and mushrooms are becoming a very hot topic. And, you know, especially now that we're looking into psychedelics and the potential legalization of that, it's just like it's all woven together, you know. And it's just as time passed, all of a sudden this all came. It's almost like it just was, you know, it just all, the universe just made it all happen. And I mean, for a while there, I'd sort of stepped away a little bit as far as the farm. The farm wound down, and it's taken on a different, you know, different life and stuff like that. Because it's just, as everyone got older and stuff like that, we're not doing as much actual growing, as much of the hard work as it was before. So I was focusing on other things, but then it's just my attention and everything's been drawn back with the situation, especially in Canada. We're sort of a little bit of ahead of the game, especially with what just happened with cannabis. And watching that whole situation play out, then, you know, it just the time was right to sort of try to capitalize on all that experience and all the things that that the family's done over the last couple of decades there. So I mean, that's my story in general. And I mean, also basically through, you know, my own life, I just started, you know, the interest in microdoses started to grow, and I started hearing people inquire, and people were asking me, and, you know, getting me to, you know, why don't you get involved in this? You know, I personally had never even really tried it, you know. And then, you know, so I made some capsules, and I started making some products for some people, because we have a high quality thing. And
you mean never tried microdosing?
Yeah, I've never tried microdosing. Sorry, yeah, I never tried microdosing mushrooms myself. And then when I did, I mean, the benefit was just so obvious, you know, it was so clear. And I just realized that it was definitely something I wanted to pursue, you know, instantly. And we decided to launch Vellum. We tried, you know, and it happened quite fast. The decision was pretty quick.
Yeah.
And we'll get back into that launch of Vellum. May, a bit about your origin story on what role mushrooms played in your life.
For sure. I think more than mushrooms specifically, it was, I grew up on a piece of property with my entire family. Like, we lived in different houses, but my mom and her brothers and sisters and my grandma and all my cousins, we lived on a piece of property. So having her near me growing up was really such a gift, because she grew everything. And in British Columbia, you can wild harvest almost everything. You can live almost entirely off the land and the ocean there. Not that we did, but just her love of the natural world and plants and growing food and tea herbs, and just how I was really indoctrinated into that from a super young age, so feeling like the earth has a lot of medicine and nutrition and knowledge was really foundational to growing up. So there's tons of mushroom harvesting, and you can eat chanterelles, and you can pick mushrooms all year round where I grew up. It's right in the temperate rainforest on the coast there. So I'm just really interested in why people do what they do as well. So there's a kind of mental health component there, and like what it takes to change, why we make the decisions we do, like these kinds of sort of existential, like human questions I'm really been interested in. So when you combine the foraging / hippie philosophies with my interest in mental health, and really the democratization of mental health is what I want. I have a really strong social justice agenda, which I also blame on the hippies. And yeah, so that's mainly it, and then also just I'm from a family where there is a lot of really serious alcoholism and drug addiction and untreated mental health. And I'm from a community where there's a lot of that. And then just a lot of people in my life have really struggled with mental health issues and addiction. So, there's a very personal element to it, and there's a very like kind of bigger vision element to it. And then there's a like very deep sort of heritage element to it for me, like with the connection to my grandma and my whole family's love of the land, and sort of being more connected to our food sources and using food as medicine preventatively and things like that.
So then that takes us to the creation of Vellum Health about 2 years ago. So many people have ideas that is their heart speaking to them, and that's their must. And you guys felt that must, that you must create this company for the world, for the state of the mental health problem going on. And so often though, people, they feel that calling, they hear that must, but they don't do it because they hear the shoulds of society, parents, teachers, and fear stops them in the tracks. So did that come up? Did you guys kind of have that barrier?
No, we were raised by very lawless people, both of us. So no, not really. That's fine. Like, sure, sometimes we thought about it, especially in the beginning. We did worry about the legality of it a little bit more. But also business development is a passion of mine. I have had other businesses too. And Aaron too has, many different businesses as offshoots of his parents' businesses and different ones that he's run as well. So entrepreneurial things and understanding that something is of real value, and trying to market that is also like something that's really energizing to me. So
yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, and conscious capitalism, or like a capitalism that isn't exploitive, is also something that I'm passionate about. Being able to provide something that isn't harmful to the environment or other people, that's actually beneficial, and creating some kind of livelihood out of that is pretty much my life goal, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. And I just what you said about the must of it, I think that's important, because I mean, just going through my own experience and like some of the things you were saying about the state of the mental health and the state of the options that people have, going through my own life, my own struggles, you got to a point and you just realize it's almost like the must is inherent in it, because there isn't any choice. Like I went through the process and I saw what was being on offer to people, and I saw the sort of tools that are there, and especially for someone that's like privileged like myself and that had the ability to sort of even use some of those things, and the complete ineffectiveness of it, and the complete bureaucracy, the system that you're being told, like this entire, like it goes against all the principles of all the stuff we were talking about earlier. So then once this opportunity sort of came up, like I said, that was the underlying current of it. And then when it combined with mushrooms of all things, and this, this ability to use it as a tool for some of the stuff that she was just talking about, then, you had to do it. Like you said, it was just something that must be done.
Yeah. It's a way that we can eliminate a level of gatekeeping towards mental health, right? And that's pretty hard to do. in a system that is set up like this, you know, giving people direct access to a tool to make decisions on their own about their health without, like, you know, the doctor or the priest or the pharmacist or whoever in between them.
Yeah. So from your guys' learned experience, what advice would you give a fellow hero on the path that is feeling that whether that must be quit their job and go back to school and pursue a master's, or travel the world, or go to yoga training, or start a business, but they're feeling stuck in the mud from all those the shoulds of society, parents, and just past beliefs. What advice do you have them to kind of give them that push, that will give them that faith to step into that unknown world?
Wow, that's a hard one, because, you know, it's easy to say that, but for me, basically, it's like you have to, like you said, you have to be pushed. You know what I mean? Like I'm not, even though we've done this, I mean, I'm certainly no expert in that. I mean, it's almost like you have to be shoved off. You know, the situation just almost dictates it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, looking back on things, you know, you realize that once that does happen and these things, you know, you're forced to do it, or however you know, you realize that, yeah, you probably should have listened to that all along. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and it's really important, at least you can't ignore it completely. And, you know, you don't want to, you got to be smart, and you got to do, you know, you make good decisions, but it's important to listen to that feeling.
Okay.
That's what I'd say.
Sure. It's important to listen. I agree. What I would say is, inside each of us, there's a self that's actually real, an essential self. And that self is guided by heart's desire. And if we are able to answer that call and live from that place of our authentic, you know, our real expression, the yearning that we have to live a certain way or be seen a certain way or to create something, we suffer a lot less, you know. And so there's kind of like a social structure and a family structure and even an internal, like, egoic, you know, mind voice kind of structure to it. Yeah. And so that can be the worst one, as we know, and often mimics those other voices of family and society. But it's like, we're going to suffer either way. That's the reality, you know? So we either choose to suffer and people please, or we choose to suffer and at least be in alignment.
Yeah.
So it's really
So
just how long. Yeah, for sure. And something else that my teacher gave me, I will share with you. She said, Maylene, people don't change when it's hard, and they don't change when it's uncomfortable. People only change when it's unbearable to stay the same. Yeah.
Beautifully said. So beautifully said. So let's examine some, other than using plant medicines or mushrooms to help with your mental health, what are some other foundational tools that you, Aaron, and you may use to attend to your optimal well-being, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually?
That is such a great question, Derek. I have so many answers. Okay. My number one is routine. You need a routine. That is the most fundamental thing. It doesn't even matter if your routine is 1 minute or 5 minutes, if it's brushing your teeth, anything. But the reality of the world we live in is that it's very unpredictable and very chaotic. So anything that you can do consistently, even if it's making your bed, you know, I like breath practice in the morning. I try and do 20 minutes and then at least some stretching or yoga, like anything. It's best to, I find, catch the mind when it first wakes up, you know, and then do the practices that ground us early so that it's like not gearing up so much. So any kind of breath practice, meditative practice, and then anything that's physical. So sweat on your spine if you can, but if not, anything, even 5 minutes. So just whatever you can fit into your life and do consistently, I think, is the key. It doesn't even really matter what it is. And then the other part of that is having, the most important part, I think, on a lot of levels, is having community and people that you can talk to who can really receive you and talk to about these ideas, and you can change, you know. Because I think one of the barriers to actually changing or trying something new or trying on a different, like, self is the reaction that we get from friends and family. So having people around you that really support your growth and your expansion. And I know that that's hard. I mean, we live in a very disconnected kind of culture, but just seeking out people in situations where people are going to nurture and encourage and support and facilitate your growth is really key. Those are my big ones, aside from gut health, which is my other big big one. Guts. Yeah, stomach health is super, super, super important. So those are my kind of foundational ones. But I love routine. It's really the thing. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Those are some great tips. And Aaron, how about you? What are some of your foundational principles to keep you well?
Well, I mean, I don't know how I've got to add to that. I don't know. I guess I think, diet and just being conscious of that, and just, having a routine for that, or just having a plan for that is really important. And getting some, because it's easy to say that, but then also, taking some initiative or control of it, and sort of getting some knowledge about that, and what's actually happening. That's very important.
That's true.
And because like you're saying, it's the integration of sort of the mind and the body and stuff like that. So you just got to do, the basic things. Like, you obviously have to keep yourself fit in all those different ways, and just, any type of movement practice like yoga, and, exercising and stuff like that, whatever level you need. But you have to be able to, you have to be able to be there, and, have all these systems functioning at the same time. Because if you think you're just going to take even whatever, a microdose or anything else, you know what I mean? It's there's it's you have to have a holistic approach to that. You have to do all those things.
Yeah, it's a magic capsule, but not a magic pill, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So Aaron, you mentioned yoga, and one thing that really drew my interest is, like, as a yoga teacher myself, I use yoga to help myself recover from a severe traumatic brain injury I suffered in 2010, which was a complication from mixed martial arts, but then also an assault. It was very severe. I was in a coma for 3.5 days, and yoga was the primary tool that helped my recovery, and that just opened the wellness door into all other aspects, including journaling, meditation, plant medicine, and all the way down the line, nutrition, proper exercise, proper sleep. But yoga was really like the root there. And so the thing that drew my interest is, like, with your guys' different blends, you recommend setting an intention and doing some yoga poses. So what is the origin of that? I'm just curious to know, where does yoga play into this whole picture of psilocybin? And just, that's very interesting how, for your journeys, you recommend squat, camel, and pigeon for the penis envy, or for the B plus, golden teacher, child's pose, corpse, and pigeon. So what's the history behind that?
Well, I don't know. I think a vital part of this, especially doing the microdose, is, movement, and just sort of like, experience, because it's sort of, you get caught in your head, especially when we're talking about all these, mental health things and depression or injuries and stuff like that, right? So it's a very important reminder to sort of, experience like all these things happening at once. And at the very beginning of it, like my first microdose experience that really worked was, I took it and I got on my bike. And I was on my bike and I was just riding along, and it was a sunny day, and all of a sudden it was just like, I just realized that it was a sunny day and it was great, and I was having a good time, you know what I mean? And I was riding my bike down this great hill and stuff like that. And just, it seems silly, it's just a very small thing, but I hadn't thought that or felt that, and it's very much spurred on by the movement and like having your body feel good. And then I was doing yoga, and I was starting to sort of use it to try to get myself going. And it's a great way to sort of push through that door, like you're saying. It's almost like you have to force it, because once something's happened to your brain, or once you're in one of those modes and stuff like that, it's you take a microdose and then you do the yoga or stuff like that, and then it gets you in your body, and it's impossible. You have to force it. Even just by doing the motions and having that intention to do these things, and then to breathe, especially at the same time. And it's like the fundamental basis of like sort of getting these things back in, a homeostasis, getting these things like functioning again. And it's like, really, you just have to keep doing it. That's the key. And that's where you get the breakthroughs, and even if it's as far as an accomplishment, or, how you feel good at the end of a thing like that, or you do yoga, especially, it feels like you can't do it, and it sort of feels like strange and stuff like that, and it feels different. So to contort it to some of the different things, and it brings you back to, remembering how you were, and remembering when you were still elastic and you could still have different possibilities and all that stuff, which is, it really seems like you never get there, but you can be backed into a corner quite easily. especially if it's something like an injury or something like that. I mean, I'm not sure, I never really got it looked at, but I hit my head on something at 1.2 during this thing, and I really think that affected me. You know what I mean? I like, and just that, especially in almost as far as your mood and your ability to just take these things on, like you think you're just going to attack it like you're, like you would have before it, but that's why it's so confounding, because you're not like you were before.
Yeah.
And you have to actually put a practice in to sort of get that happening again. You're just like,
Mhm.
oh, why don't I go and run, or why don't I just do all the things that I used to do? But you have to break it down to, and yoga is a really good way to do that, because it combines the breath and it combines that intention, and you can get into it at a very beginner thing. And there's these flows and these classes that you can do, and it's just that you get to take a half hour or an hour or whatever it is, and then you can out of your rut.
Yeah, no, so beautiful. So there's the different types of mushrooms that you guys offer. So you guys have the flow, so that's for the beginners. That's 50 milligrams. You have the enhanced, that's 100 milligrams. And then you have your journey, which is 200 milligrams. And then the flow and the enhanced, they're of the strain Golden Teacher. And for journey, you have a few different options. There's the Penis Envy, there's the B plus, and then the Golden Teacher once again. So can you maybe just kind of get into like, what are these different types? Golden Teacher, Penis Envy, B plus, and familiarize us with that.
Yeah, at first I thought that them like being vastly different was kind of BS, but after trying them, I can assure you they are very different. There's a different effect, particularly with microdosing. I'll talk about B plus, and then you want to talk about the other?
Sure.
B plus is the one I prefer too. And the reason that I like it is because often not the day that I take the microdose, but the day after or the day after that. So the middle days, the integration days, I'll often have very strong emotional experiences come up. And rather than resisting those, I'm able to just be with them, or they're just here, or there's like a kind of, there's like an emotional experience, and then there's an awareness of that experience. It's like you're slightly detached from it in a way that allows it to be processed more easily. When I tell customers about that, and that's why I like them, they're like, oh no, I definitely don't want that one. I don't want to do hard emotional work. They're like, I want the one that's fun and creative. And I'm like, okay, cool. So that's like a little bit more of the Golden Teacher one, I think. So I'll let Erin tell you a little bit more about that one. I find it like too stimulating or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
but it's much more popular. People prefer Golden Teacher.
Yeah, I mean, the B plus is a strain that we've been working with like at the farm for like a long time. I mean, because on that side of things, it's very easy to work with and commercially viable. You get a lot of mushrooms. So at the time, that was important to what we were doing there and the work we were doing. But it's just something that we've gotten this strain. We've worked it through so many generations. It's very consistent and it's very stable. And it's a great strain for both the growers and the people that are using it. We find that it's more, we feel like we said, we find it's more introspective, and we find that it's sort of like better for like, sort of when you're looking at yourself and you're thinking about some of these things that you might need. The Golden Teacher is like a very standard strain throughout the industry, I guess, or it's well known. It's got a very good name. It's got good name recognition, and it's sort of a, down the middle of the road, standard, it's almost a definitive, magic mushroom. You get high energy from it, you get some visual action, and it's very popular. We've decided to combine that with the more stimulating blend, like the Boost blend, which is the one that has the lion's mane and the cordyceps in it. Because that's like she said, it's the Golden Teacher is the more popular one, and that's the one that people tend to gravitate towards. So I wanted to have lion's mane in that, and that was, I think those things enhance each other well. The B plus with the energetic, I mean the Golden Teacher is very energetic and and visual and creative and stuff like that. So we put that in that blend, and that's right now our most popular thing, is the Golden Teacher combined with the lion's mane and the cordyceps. That's what the most demand is for. That's the best feedback.
Yeah, and then what about the Penis Envy? What characteristics does that one bring to the table?
Okay, Penis Envy. What we wanted was, I mean, that's almost a legendary strain. It was founded by McKenna, who's this legend in psychedelics and LSD and all these different things. And it's very potent and it's unique looking. It's got a unique characteristics as far as like look and smell and stuff like that. So we wanted to bring sort of a higher potency, sort of premium type of strain on there, but we wanted it to be, you know, unique as well, something that you could tell was something different. Because to be all honest, like most mushrooms look the same. You know, there's certain outliers that have a unique look to them, but we wanted to, you know, we wanted to offer that to people, and it's very potent. I find that it keeps you it's a very strong effect on the body, and I feel that it's you get waves of feeling through the body, especially in the legs, and you get a very heavy feeling. It's very grounding, and you're very high. You know, there's a strong effect, but at the same time, your mind stays ordered, and you're very much in your mind, and you're thinking coherently, so you can get a good experience, and you can like sort of use those intentions, and you can sort of stay focused, I guess you could say, on like what you're trying to do without it being, you're not in outer space. Is that's how I find it. So I find it to be particularly effective, and I think it's a really good strain. So right now we're only using that. It's more of a limited supply because as far as growing it, you get way less, especially with the sort of organic techniques and the things that we do. So we're not offering that in a blend right now. We might do something like that in the future, but for now it's only in the journey caps.
Yeah.
With the journeys is a pure mushroom. Like you said, it's not blended with anything. So we want to give people access to the dried material, and also, capsules for all the different strains that we use, so they can do that if they need. And
Yeah.
we might have a microdose blend with that in the future.
Yeah. So you guys, we talked a lot about the microdoses. You guys also have whole mushrooms available as well, which you could use for macrodoses. So what role does macrodoses play in one's mental health and healing journey?
Well, there's a lot of new research that sort of implies that macrodosing can help people come to terms with very difficult things. So childhood trauma, terminal illness, and like premature death even, so these are very serious things for the human mind to overcome. And any tool, even the best therapy struggles to do that. So anything that could potentially help people process such difficult emotions, it seems like that's what macrodosing is being used for in a kind of medical academic context right now. And that's really interesting. Individuals buy mushrooms, to take recreationally, like 1.5 grams or 2 grams of mushrooms is pretty more, or 3 or 4 grams of mushrooms, 5 grams of mushrooms, I guess. As we've worked more with microdosing, I've come to think that if people want a macrodose, it's a good idea to work up to a larger dose through microdosing, you know what I mean? Or doing like 300, 500. Like we call 200 milligrams, the journeys are kind of the beginning of what we call a recreational dose, so you're not like flying to the moon and whatever, or having a super psychedelic experience, but there is a real sweet spot between about 200 and 500 milligrams, where you are using them not necessarily therapeutically, but in quite a recreational way, but you're not like super macro dosing. So I really recommend that kind of intermediate step for people that want to try macrodosing. And I personally think it can be great for having really difficult conversations, in relationships. Yeah, psilocybin can actually help things be discussed more openly and facilitate that kind of stuff. So I really think that there's kind of a relationship potential with low macro dosing, almost similar to how ecstasy was originally.
You think it has to do with the nervous system relaxing, and then more ideas, the clarity that comes to mind, you're kind of
and just less like the mechanism that tells us don't say that, don't do that, that's not good, you can't do that, what will they think, what will they say, that mechanism is much quieted. That's what the dosing, that's what the psilocybin is helping do, is just keep that mechanism at bay. So you're like, oh, I'm going to say this is the truth, boop. Oh, I feel this way, I'm going to say it. There's less of the blocking of showing up. Less blocking of the presence. We're not like trying, it almost feels like you're like let off the leash or something, like let off the hook a bit, and you can just like be here. It's all right to just be here. Like,
Yeah. That's
And
fascinating to me because I have a tendency of like wanting to meditate and be super introspective, but to be aware that it's also good to share the experience and have that possibility to feel maybe more comfortable or open.
hugely. Yeah. Recreational dosing. We think there's huge potential with like dating,
Mhm.
singles nights around microdosing.
Wow.
Yeah, like hugely. Social occasions to replace alcohol at social
oh
occasions.
yeah,
People
Oh my
way
God.
chattier. Like
That
you're
sounds
interested in
dreamy.
people. You know what I mean? I'm very introverted, and people are annoying. So even for me, I'm like, oh hey, like we're out. You know, it's like way
Wow.
more. Just like life seems more interesting. It seems more accessible. It, like people's reactions you take less personally, you know what I mean? All these things
Yeah.
help facilitate social interaction to a level, you know, and a lot of us are pretty rusty after the last 2 years. So
Yeah,
yeah.
seriously.
yeah.
But you bringing up the possibility of people gathering together and microdosing instead of getting
Oh yeah.
drunk just lights me up so much. This,
Yeah.
this idea,
Yeah.
like,
Wouldn't you like to
Yeah.
go to a party where everyone was eating microdoses? I would.
oh my God, I'll be there. Yeah.
That's why we need to throw them. That's what I
See
mean.
you
That
there.
That would be the next
that
step.
sounds yeah, that
Event.
sounds like a super fun idea.
Mhm.
On the other spectrum, on the even more off, that's the heroic dose.
Yeah.
What role does the heroic dose play in one's healing? So like a heroic dose would probably be like 5 grams, I'd say,
Yeah,
depending on the person's size.
Yeah.
intolerance.
And that you're going pretty deep.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important. I mean, like you're saying, some of these very big questions and some of these, very tough things, and even just sort of all the structure that's that people build up by the time they're getting into these mid age or older age. It requires an intense tool, I guess. So it can be used for that. But we feel like we don't have as much experience doing deep mushroom journeys ourselves, or like leading people through that. We've got some partners and some people that we work with and are friends with that have got a lot of experience doing that down south in the Caribbean and some places like that, doing retreats. We feel that it's important it's an important tool, but also it needs to be tethered to something.
Yeah.
Sort of, what I
You
mean?
need major integration work after. You need
Yeah.
a qualified therapist or somebody who's really
and during,
experienced.
really, like you
Yeah.
should build up to it. Like
you
she
need
said,
to you need
I
to
think
build up to it. You need to understand what's going to happen. You have to have a plan in place. You would do fasting. You would have your diet set. You would have weeks off to integrate
it's
afterwards.
intense. It's completely
really intense.
all-encompassing.
Yeah, like
you go out of your body and mind.
yeah, you do, and
it's
you have to be
dangerous.
ready to see what's actually there. Do you
And
know what
have
I
someone
mean?
there with you.
Not
That's
the
why
idea or the story about
yeah.
yourself, or the things that have really gone on and the way you actually felt is going to be right there.
And
So it's like,
yeah.
some people are totally ready for that. They want it, but a lot of people, I think, it can be scary.
Yeah, and to
It's
have
not
someone there
light.
that's
It's not
helping
a-
you with that experience, and to sort of
Don't do it by yourself. Don't do something like that by yourself, is what I would say.
But that's
I don't
exactly what I
recommend it
mean.
at
And
all.
someone that can keep it focused, and someone that can make it a beneficial thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like
You
keep
need a
focused on it so
structure.
you can explore things, because you're not able to when you're just by yourself. It can be very scary, and especially since you're confronting all these things, you're going to be, you're going to need someone. It's like most people use a guide. And there's people that are doing this, whether it's a guide or it's a retreat or something like that. That's the standard way to do it.
And people need to understand that psychedelic experiences that strong can bring up memories that you've never had before.
Or didn't understand.
Yeah, or you didn't know what they were. You know what I mean? There can be awarenesses that people are not prepared for. There can be repressed memories and stuff. So you really need somebody who is experienced with that, who can comfort you, who knows what to say. Like, that's very important. You can do more harm than good if there isn't enough of a safety net put in place for stuff like that, and I hesitate to recommend that to anyone, only because they're so intense that you are doing less integration. It's harder to bring back the understandings that you get there and integrate them into your real life, because you're just it's so extreme and all encompassing when you're there, whereas I find microdosing and recreational dosing allows you to kind of be like back and forth a bit. You're like dipping your toe into that knowledge, and then you're coming back to stability. So it's less triggering for the nervous system, and it's easier to stay more neutral with the awarenesses that are coming up and stuff. So yeah, I'm not opposed to it at all. I just think doing it for the right reasons and within the right structure and container with support is critical. I do not recommend it without those things at all.
Especially because, like you're saying,
It's
a lot
not
of
fun. Like, it's not like,
people
you know
are
what
at
I
the
mean?
lowest point, or people are at a very desperate situation, or people are trying to solve like the biggest questions.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't even use cannabis, or you don't even
Yeah,
use mushrooms or psychedelics or anything like that. So it's not. I don't want to say, I'm not going to say to anyone, just your first step should be,
Never.
buy a half ounce of
I
mushrooms
would never.
and eat
No,
half
never.
of it.
Never.
You know what I mean? Even if you've got a good set and setting, you can have your
No.
intention and stuff like that. That's
If somebody had never done mushrooms and they wanted to try them, the most I would tell them to do is like 500 milligrams. The most.
Yeah, half.
And then once you've done that, you can do 850 and then 1,000 or something, and then you can see if you want to try, because that's 1 gram. 1,000 milligrams is 1 gram of mushroom. So if you do 1 gram and you're feeling like you want to try it, sure. But even then, I wouldn't be like, go do 5.
Because then you've traveled there, and you're gonna you can go and come back, and then once you've integrated a couple of things, and maybe you found a way to bring something back, and maybe you found a way to use that. And I think you have to have some skill. Yeah, you do. It might be the right.
You need to exactly. You do. You need to practice being with yourself.
Yeah.
Comforting yourself. Finding, being with the parts that are going to be there, that are going to be wondering, questioning, afraid, thinking about their childhood, feeling, judgment, something you said as a kid, the way you were, the way you were embarrassed, how your mom yelled at you in the store that time or whatever, like the stuff comes, and it's like, it's an experience. It's like, taking stock of your life and where you are and stuff, so it's not a quick fix. It's not going to make anyone feel great if they feel terrible. Not at all. It's going to highlight whatever's there. So you need to be prepared to be with what's there.
Double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah. It's a valuable tool, very valuable tool. Like I said, people who are coming to terms with being in palliative care, or like early terminal illness and stuff, that's huge. I can't even imagine. So as a tool for that, yes. But even those people are eating like 1.5 grams.
Yeah.
And they're finding peace with death.
Yeah.
So
right. So
people who are like, I need 5 grams to feel anything. I'm like, okay, all right, buddy. The science says different, okay? But sure, go off and 5 gram it. But
and I think this area is sort of where I don't know if we really answer your question, but at the same time, I think this is an area that we're trying to sort of focus on right now. We're trying to sort of set some boundaries and sort of understand ourselves what we think is the best thing to do. And as far as a clinical setting or using these things, we really want to sort of create a spectrum. Right up to, it's not just like, you take a 100 milligram cap, which is a very small piece of 1 gram, or take 7 grams, what I mean? With a blindfold, I think there's going to be there's a whole spectrum, and there's there's how many million different people in the world that are going to be using this, and every situation is going to be different. So I think that's the area that we're going to be exploring. And that we're going to try to, set some boundaries and set some best practices and sort of, explore in that mid range where, with a dose that it's not a microdose, but, you don't have to be completely, you don't have to have full ego death and like separation from your mind. But and that's good. At the same time, those things are good, and some people do need that. But I guess that's just the point I want to make, that I think there's there's a full spectrum of people and situations.
That's such a great point. And what we found is, because when we started, we were like, oh, here's the protocols. Here's the Fadiman protocol, and here's the Stamets protocol, and do. So we were giving people that information. And then after we started doing the microdoses more frequently, and we heard customer feedback, like the most popular method of dosing by far is what we've named intuitive dosing, okay, which is no schedule at all. It's maybe 2 or 3 days a week. You might microdose if you feel like it, you need it, and then maybe 1 or 2 days a month, you might have a recreational day where you might eat 200, 300, 400, 500 microdoses. Worth, milligrams total. And you might eat 200, around noon, and then you might eat another 200 at 4 o'clock, and then you might eat another 200 around 8 o'clock. You know what I mean? It might be like a barbecue, or you're out at the beach or something like that. Like that's the dosing level. Like rather than people being like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to, unless you're treating like actual serious depressive and anxiety symptoms, most people are using intuitive dosing, especially parents who have young kids. I don't need to explain why they need it on demand. And then also women, particularly around hormonal cycles, like related to the depression around your period and stuff. That's really when I find people are dosing as I need it, when I feel like it, and it works right away the same day. You know what I mean? Antidepressants, and anti-anxiety medication has long buildups to work, and long weaning off of it.
Which is the problem.
So we also have a lot of people who contact us and say, I'm trying to lower my medication, or I'm trying to get off antidepressants and I want to use microdosing.
Yeah. And it's very important, right? Because then you're active and then you're part of it. It's not just this sort of heal all thing. You don't just take it every day and then there's no problems, which is, I think that's a big part of the issue.
Exactly. Yeah.
With the other things that you're able with other tools or medications.
Exactly. It's about you being really invested and involved in like the active everyday contact with your body, with your biome, knowing what's going on. If I have a symptom, I know where to go. I'm going to research it, or I'm going to, you know what I mean? It's about just encouraging people to not take control, because that's kind of a weird, like, capitalist sort of like, I'm in charge. It's not that. It's more like being really present to what's needed, and really just like very mindful, I guess, and a very real-time mindfulness towards what your body's needing. So that's been super interesting, realizing that people are, and us too, it's not every day, or maybe you'll have a really busy day on the day that you would normally dose, so you're like really stressed or something, so you don't microdose that day because you want to do relaxation practices, or you're going to, you have important documents to do, or you got to go meet someone or something, so then you would just do it the next day because it's like a day off, a day after the stress day, so you can have a relaxing day. Some people are using it to combat stress, and some people are using it on the relaxation day to relax more.
Yes, I think that was such a great answer. It was really perfect. There's been so much sage advice given in this conversation that I thank you both for. And that brings us to my final question, and that's to each of you. And that is, through all your journey, through all the highs and lows that is this life, through the mushrooms, the psychedelics, the relationships, everything along the way, what has been your greatest life lesson that you've learned on the path that you feel called to share with Bianca, myself, and the audience today?
Wow, that's a hard one. That's a tough question. I don't know. Nothing matters and everything matters at the same time. You've got to be able to, if somehow you can sort of exist in there and like take situations and decisions with both those things in mind, then you're that's a good spot to be.
Yeah. Mine, I think, is that this is a tough lesson that I've had to learn over and over, which is that people's capacity to take care of themselves and to honor themselves is exactly their capacity to do that for you. So however people are taking care of themselves, that's their capacity, and to really respect and honor that, to really understand that people are showing you who they are. Yeah, and to trust that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for both those answers, just this entire conversation in general. For listeners, they can find you guys on the internet at vellumhealth.com or on IG at Vellum Health. And if they're in the States, theultramystic.com, and on IG, the Ultramystic.
Perfect.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I think that's where to send them. Any other last words that you'd like to share as we close this conversation?
Just want to say thank you for having us and letting us, have this conversation.
Yeah, great questions. It's been such a pleasure talking to both of you. Genuinely, thank you.
Likewise.
I feel so grateful that you guys are bringing this to the world. So thank you.
Thank you, both of you. And we'd love to chat again.
Absolutely. There's so much more we could talk about. Gut health, I was wanting to ask you more about that. There's so much. So down the road, I hope we could chat again.
I would love to.
Close, beautiful. To close this conversation, we bring our fist into the winner circle of digital.
I love it.
Boom.
Thank you. Boom. Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Bianca.
And that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have an awesome afternoon, both of you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.